Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to try and get back into doing some stats for you. So I realise I've been really hit and miss with doing my stats this year. So I'm just going to do the August and September stats, and then I'm going to try for the rest of the year to get back into doing them monthly. We'll see how that goes with my energy levels and whatnot, but we'll give it a go. I can't remember how I usually do this because it's been so long, so I'm just going to do it how I feel. So in August I read 9 books and in September I read 8 books, which is not too bad. I think 8 books is the least I've read in a month this year. Oh no, I only read 7 in June. So yeah, that's fairly standard for how things have been this year. The longest book that I read in that period was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, which was 1130 pages, and the shortest book I read in that time was, it looks like it was My Body Is Not a Prayer Request by Amy Kenny, which was 208 pages. I read both of those in August. So for September, the longest book that I finished was Shelter in Place by Nora Roberts, and the shortest book that I finished was, I can actually hold this one up, Vintage 1954 by Antoine Laurain. Because of how my health has been this year, I'm actually just going to say this now. I kind of have abandoned the budget a little bit. While I have calculated how much I would have earned for each of the books I read at this time, the budget's gone out the window. And so I'm going to restart that from January. We're going to write off 2022 as just a really difficult year in a lot of ways, and we're going to restart the budget from January, so I'm not going to go into that. I've just filmed a book haul so you can see some of what I've been buying recently, but we're not going to go into details about how much money I've spent because I don't know anymore and I can't be bothered to work it out because that sounds like a lot of maths and I don't want to do it. Moving on. The book that was published first was, again, Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. That was from 1844. I read a couple of books that were written in the 20th century, and then the majority of the books I read were written in the 21st century. So there were 3 that were published in 2022, 2 of which I had for a review. Ratings. In August, I gave 2 books 5 stars, 1 book 4.5 stars, 4 books 4 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, and 1 book 3 stars. And in September, I gave 4 books 4 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, and 1 book 3 stars. Pretty good. Read more books that I enjoyed more in August. The book that took me the longest to read in that period, in the 2 months, was The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Peter Scazerro, which took me 149 days. The book that I read the quickest in that period was The Love Arrangement by Ruby Basu, which was a book I had for review, and that took me 2 days because I really enjoyed it and I got through it very quickly. The book that had been on my TBR for the longest in that time was The Count of Monte Cristo, which had been on there for 2,335 days. And then I had a couple of books that I read pretty much as soon as I got them. One was the library book and the other one was The Emotionally Healthy Leader, which I originally bought for a class at college. And so I started reading it pretty much as soon as I got it. Okay, where the books came from. In August, 2 of the books were from my physical backlist. 5 of the books were new to me this year, and 2 of the books were from the library. So at least I was reading quite a lot from my own TBR. Just a lot of them were ones that I'd acquired within the year. In September, 3 of the books were from my physical backlist. 1 was from my digital backlist. 2 were new books that I'd acquired this year. 1 was a library book and 1 was a reread. So I think that was actually the first month this year where I hit the target of half the books being from my backlist. Formats. So in August I read 5 paperbacks, 2 hardbacks and 2 ebooks, and in September I read 5 paperbacks, 1 hardback and 2 ebooks. Audience. In August, I read 1 YA book and 8 adult books, and in September, all the books I read were for an adult audience. Genres. In August, I read 2 Christian non-fiction, 1 classic, 1 contemporary, 1 historical fiction, 1 inspirational romance, 1 regular romance, and 2 speculative fiction. And in September, I read 1 Christian non-fiction, 2 historical fiction, 1 inspirational romance, 1 mystery, 1 non-fiction, 1 romantic suspense, and 1 speculative fiction. Publishers. In August, 6 of the books were from Big Five publishers and 3 were from indies. And in September, 3 of the books were from Big Five publishers and the other 5 were from indies. Author nationalities, quite a range actually across the 2 months. In total, I read 8 books from American authors, 1 Bangladeshi author, 3 British authors, 1 British Indian, 1 Caribbean American, 2 French authors, 1 Malaysian author, and that's all of them. So for author ethnicities, I did okay in August. I read 6 books from authors from marginalised ethnicities and 3 books from white authors. That kind of flipped in September, so I only read 2 books from marginalised ethnicities and the other 6 were from white authors. For author gender, in August I read 2 books from cisgendered men and 7 books from cisgendered women, and in September I read 3 books from cisgendered men and 5 books from cisgendered women. Okay, let's do challenges next. So it's been fairly mixed actually. In August I read 1 book from my gift TBR, 1 book for review and 1 book for read around the world. In September I read 2 books from my subscriptions TBR, 2 books for review and 1 book for read around the world. So I'm doing relatively okay on some of those challenges, not as well as I maybe would have hoped, but never mind. And then for author diversity stats, this one hasn't been great to be fair. So in August I read 6 books from authors from marginalised ethnicities and 1 book from an author with a disability. And in September I read 2 books from authors from marginalised ethnicities, and that was it in terms of author diversity. So that means in the last 2 months I haven't read any books from authors from the LGBTQIA+ community, or who have talked openly about their mental health, or who have been open about being neurodiverse. So yeah, that's something I need to work on probably. But for character diversity, I did hit all of those markers across several books. So in August I read 6 books with characters with marginalised ethnicity, 3 books with LGBTQIA+ characters, 4 books featuring a character with a disability, 2 books featuring characters with mental illness, and 2 books featuring neurodiverse characters. And in September it was 5 books with characters with marginalised ethnicity, 1 book featuring an LGBTQIA character, 4 books featuring characters with disabilities, and 3 books featuring characters with mental illness. So that was all the stats. Let's talk about least favourite and favourite books. My least favourite book I read in August was called Passing by Samaria by Sharon Ewell Foster. I gave this one 3 stars. This was an inspirational romance, the first one I've read from African American author, and actually I think I saw the other day that she is the first African American author to be a published inspirational romance author. It was pretty good in some ways, better in some ways than some of the other inspirational romances I've read. This looked at race riots in Chicago in the 1920s. That was kind of the setting for it, and lots of really interesting stuff, but also some questionable, problematic stuff from my perspective in terms of the theology presented. So yeah, the stuff about race was good. Some of the stuff about gender was okay, some of it wasn't, and some of the theology presented was less than good. My favourite book I read in August, I can't actually choose between the 2 I gave 5 stars to. So one that I gave 5 stars to was called My Body Is Not a Prayer Request by Amy Kenny. This is Christian non-fiction about disability justice within the church and within society. I've been diagnosed this year with a chronic illness and I have an unseen disability, and actually it was really validating for me to read this book. I got so much out of it, and it's kind of one that I'm trying to force into people's hands now. The other one I gave 5 stars to was The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, which is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I really love this. I really loved the first one as well, the 5th season. I've just got 1 more to go in that series. I'm really looking forward to reading that, hopefully picking that one up soon, while the second book is still fairly fresh in my brain. So that's very briefly my 2 favourite books in August. A bit harder to pick for September. I only gave 1 book 3 stars in September, which was this one. It was a reread. It's David and Bathsheba by Roberta Kells Dorr. This is one of the primary books I'm analysing for my research. You can see I've tabbed it up quite heavily. The tabs at the top are perspective characters, so blue for male and pink for female, and green for mixed gender perspective. The tabs on the side are things that jumped out to me. So the very few green ones are positive things, the yellow ones are neutral things, and the many orange ones are problematic things. It's not a terrible book, there's just some really questionable stuff in there. But as a book to read, you know, I quite enjoyed it the first time I read it, hence it's still got 3 stars. But yeah, some really interesting things for me to analyse in there. And then picking a favourite one is quite hard because I gave most things I read 4 stars. I think I'm gonna say The Garden of Evening Mists by Twan, I'm gonna say was my favourite of those. This I read for Read Around the World for Malaysia. It was also a book that I got in a Ninja book box in the Advent box last year, so it counted towards my subscription books read as well. This is about a young woman, actually at the start of the story she's an old woman reflecting on her past. She is called Ling and she has been involved in the law, so she ended up as a judge and she's just kind of reaching the end of her career. So she goes back to the garden that she worked at when she was younger. She was apprenticed to a famous Japanese gardener after the War of Occupation during what we call the Second World War. Her sister was killed in a Japanese internment camp. Yunling was the only survivor from that camp, so she's kind of trying to come to terms with her past and she wants to honour her sister's memory by designing a garden for her. So she comes to this famous Japanese gardener to learn about gardening, essentially. It's really, really beautiful, really well written, really interesting insight to that part of the world, Malaysia, and its history and its relationship with the other countries around it as well. And I just, found it really good. So I'm going to say that was my favourite book for September. So that's it, actually. I've got through that quite quickly. I'm going to start trying to do stats videos more regularly again and get back into doing them monthly. And I will do a full end of the year stats wrap up to let you know how I've got on with all of my stats and goals and things. I think for most of them I've not done brilliantly, but we'll try again next year anyway. So that's it for today. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned and what you thought of them. Let me know what your best and worst books you've read recently were, or if you just want to let me know that you've been watching, you can leave some kind of statistical emoji, interpret that how you like, in the comments for me below. You can also like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you haven't already, and you can also follow me on social media. All that information will be listed for you in the description box below. But that's it for today, so thank you for watching and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.